Hello and welcome to WVU Extension Today. I'm your host, Zach Harold. Now, it might not look like it outside, but in just a few weeks, we're going to be out in the garden planting seeds and pulling weeds. So we've dedicated our entire episode today to gardening. Planting a garden is a kind of investment. You're investing your time, your money, your land. And like any investment, you want to get the biggest bang for your buck. So Harrison County Agent Jennifer Friend is here to talk to us about succession planning, a great and easy way to get the most yield from your field.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Friend and I'm the Agriculture and Natural Resources Extension Agent in Harrison County. I want to ask you a question. Did you know that there are cool and warm season plants? Cool season plants tend to do better in spring and fall, while warm season plants obviously are going to do better in summer. And another question. Are you gardening in a small space or in a container garden? Or maybe you just want to get more out of your garden? Gardening is an investment, and it's important that we get the most out of the area that we're given. Succession gardening can be the answer for this. What is succession gardening? Succession gardening is a method for you to maximize the yield and the use of your garden area. In other words, you're maximizing your investment. There are three main methods that we're going to talk about that relate to succession gardening. The first being that you plant the same vegetable on staggered dates. Another is to use multiple varieties of that same crop and plant them all at the same time. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about using the growing season to your advantage, early spring, summer, and fall crops. There are some things that are important to pay attention to when deciding to garden or succession garden. The main one is variety selection. When selecting crops to succession plant, it's important that you pay attention to the days to maturity. Days to maturity is the average days the crop goes from the seeding date to harvest, and it will play a major role in your planting schedule. You'll also want to consider disease resistance, as you don't want disease plants growing in your garden, plus they might reduce your harvest. You also need to consider the growing conditions that you're going to be able to offer to these crops, as well as what are your uses for the crops that you're growing going to be. Are you going to sell them at the farmer's market, or are you going to use them for home use such as canning, or just going from the garden to your plate? With that, you also need to consider the flavor and the cooking uses that you'll be targeting these crops for. Finally, you also need to consider what you're going to be planting these crops in, and the maximum size that the plants will get to will also be indicated on the back of the seed packet, as well as the days to maturity. Now let's talk a little bit about those different ways to succession garden. The first is staggered planting. With staggered planting, you will stagger the plantings of the same variety over 7 to 14 days. So once you harvest a row container, you can plant that again with a new crop or with the same crop if it has a short days to maturity. This staggers the harvest and is a good use, so you don't have to preserve everything at the same time, or you don't have to sell your whole harvest at the same time. Let's use an example using rover radish that has a 21-day maturity. We're going to first plant the variety in one row, and then plant a second row in 7 days, another in another 7 days, and then we'll plant one more row in 7 days, and then harvest the first row of the rover radish. You can continue planting with rover radish, or you might back plant with a summer crop like squash or cucumbers as an example. Another way to succession garden is by using multiple varieties. With this, it's important to pay attention to the days to maturity, and you'll use early, mid, and late maturing varieties of the same plant planted at the same time. Some good crops for this are sweet corn, beans, tomatoes, and cabbage. And you'll plant all of those varieties at the same time and harvest at the appropriate time. An example might be sweet corn that has a days to maturity that are 10 days apart between mid, late, and early maturing varieties. Finally, you can use the growing season to your advantage, as some plants do not perform well in hot summer weather, while others don't necessarily do well in cool spring or fall weather like tomatoes. Cool season crops are often one and done, such as peas. Then you can follow those with a fast-growing warm season crop like summer squash. And then, once that summer squash is done, you will follow it up with a cool season crop such as Brussels sprouts, and then that will finish out your growing season. So in conclusion, succession gardening can be as simple or as in-depth as you want it to be, but it will require some prior planning. And this time of year is a great time to begin planning your garden and have an idea of what varieties you want to use and what gardening methods you want to use as well. It's also important to consider what works for you and your family, as well as how much you will need. If you have questions about how much you need to plant, you can visit WVU Extension's gardening page for information on how much to plant in your garden this growing season.
Now there's a chance you could go out right now, pop those seeds in the dirt, and in a few weeks you'd have something sprouting in your garden. But if you want to give your plants the best chance at growing up happy and healthy, you probably want to do some soil testing. Evan Wilson is here to talk to us about the importance of testing, how to collect a sample, and what to do once you get your results.
Hello, I am Evan Wilson, and I am the WVU Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources for Wayne and Cabell counties down here in the southwestern part of West Virginia. And today we're going to talk about soil sampling. So to take your soil sample, now I am using our soil probe again, as I said earlier, but you can also just use your shovel, a spade you already have in your tool shed. So for our bed here, we're going to take about 10 samples throughout the bed, evenly dispersed. Some people will go straight lines, some will go diagonal, some will go random all throughout the bed just to get a better idea. Now, in your bed, you are going to grow these plants probably in rows, unless you're doing the square foot gardening method. So go down your rows. That's what I'm going to do here today. And you're going to, each sample, you're going to empty into your bucket and mix it together really well. And make sure you do put it on paper plate to dry for a couple days. That way we get better results in our soil testing form. Results. Okay, as we're getting ready to start our soil sampling in this bed here, this is bed L3. We're going to go through here and take about 10 samples throughout this bed. Some people will go straight down the line, some will go diagonally across, some will just go random throughout their bed. As long as you're getting a consistent testing depth all the way through the bed and throughout the bed, not just one end down here or one end down there. Make sure you're getting a consistent overall picture of the soil throughout that bed or that garden. That way we get better results, more accurate information to use for your fertilizer recommendations as you get your results back. So do this. You're just going to go through here and push my plunger down. Now you don't have to go all the way down to the core of the earth, just a couple inches down below the soil surface layer. And you're going to get a nice, rich, dark, red, sandy, depending on what part of the state you're at. You're going to just empty that into your bucket and make sure you remove any sort of grass or debris that might be in that sample as well. So earlier I mentioned that we're in a raised bed community garden type situation here. So we have beds L from left to right, L1, L2, L3, and L4. And once you have your soil and it's dried for a couple days on that paper plate, now do not bake this. You can't bake the water out of it. It won't give us an accurate reading. Don't stick it in direct sunlight either. But if you stick it on in your garage, in your cellar, in a shed that is fairly dry and out of direct sunlight and without animals or kids getting into it and messing up with that so you don't have to retake your soil samples, that's the best location for it. But once you have it dried for a couple days, you want to take about 1 to 2 cups of that soil. Make sure it's mixed all really well together. Break up any large clumps that might be in that. And you want 1 to 2 cups and place that in a Ziploc bag. You just need a sandwich bag. Size normally works, 1 to 2 cups as I said. And make sure you clearly label that on that bag. So we're in Wayne, West Virginia today. And I've wrote on here Wayne as my sample ID and L3. That means is the third bed from the left. And that way when we get these analyses back in a couple weeks, we'll be able to go back and realize, okay, that's where that bed sample is, and that's what that bed needs fertilizer-wise, or lime or other nutrients.
Now maybe you're not like me, but personally I have a hard time throwing newspapers away. Maybe Maybe I'll need to wrap something. Maybe I'll need to paint something. Maybe I'll need to remind myself what happened 3 weeks ago. Nevertheless, the pile gets larger and larger and larger. Well, Jason Rine has the perfect solution to this pack rat tendency. Let's head over to Brooke County where he'll show us how to grow plants in our very own homemade newspaper pots.
Hello everybody, my name is Jason Rine. I'm the West Virginia University Extension Agent here in Brooke County, West Virginia, and we're filming today from the Brooke County Library in Wellsburg. So what we're going to do today is make newspaper pots. And so this is an excellent way to start seeds because it utilizes newspaper, which would usually end up in a landfill or possibly recycled some other way, but we're able to take it and repurpose it to start our seeds. And this is actually one of our favorite projects to do in some of our school gardens and our community gardens because we're able to get kids involved right away, starting seeds in their own classrooms. And this is sort of exciting to start seeds at your house as well because you can see them develop and grow from, the little tiny seed into something bigger that you move outside eventually. All right, so what you're gonna need today for the newspaper pots is obviously, a sheet of newspaper. So I've got a full sheet of newspaper here that we're gonna use. We're gonna need a water bottle eventually to be able to water our seed. We're gonna need some Scotch tape. We're gonna need some seed starting soil or potting soil. And we're gonna need a can. So we need a can to be able to roll our pot. And this can be a pop can, it can be a water bottle, or it could be a soup can, which is sort of what I'm using today. We're also gonna need some seeds. Now your seed selection, you can pretty much pick out any seed that you want. We've got flower seeds. These are great to plant, sunflowers, right? We've got marigolds, which are also really good to plant around your garden to keep deer away. We've got tomatoes, which is my personal favorite to plant, peppers. Any kind of vegetable like that is really great to start in these little newspaper pots. So let's go ahead and start making our newspaper pots. All right, so the first thing you're gonna need to do is get your newspaper ready. So a lot of times a full sheet of newspaper will sort of come like this. You can also use one of these half sheets to get started, but I'll show you what to do if you have a full sheet. So basically the first thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna rip along the edge right here, right in the middle. And so that's gonna give us one of these full, or one of these half sheets. Okay, so that was nice and easy. And then we have our newspaper ready here. All right, now I'm just gonna take it and I'm gonna fold it like a hot dog. So we're gonna fold it right down the middle. Line it up, get our crease there. All right, and then we're gonna take our can. And this, like I said, could be a pop can, it could be a water bottle, or it could be a soup can. Then we're gonna start at the edge, and we're gonna have our folded side here where the crease is. That's gonna be the bottom of our pot. So we're gonna take this on this side and sort of go maybe 2/3 of the way. So we're gonna have a little bit sticking out right here. So it's almost half, but we're gonna move it this way a little bit more. Sorry, move it this way a little bit more. And then I'm just gonna roll it up. So you just wanna try to make it tight as you roll it. Okay. All right, and then I'm gonna tape the side right here. A little bit of Scotch tape. All right, and then we'll have a little bit of play right here. And I'm just gonna push that down with my thumbs, and this is the bottom of our pot. So that's what creates the bottom. And then a lot of times, you only need one piece of tape. Sometimes you might need two, but I like to just go with one piece of tape here. All right, and then turn it over, and here we go. We have our pot. Pull our cup out, and you have your pot that you can start with. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna get our soil ready. So like I said, this is potting soil or seed starting soil. And so just to make this easy, I got a bag here, and I've got a little scoop. So we're gonna take our dirt and just add it to, carefully add it to your pot. All right. Now you wanna get this pretty full. I mean, you don't want to overfill it, but you're going to need to have this, more than halfway full. Maybe only like a ½ inch or so left on the top. See, I just have a little bit of room left on the top. All right, so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to pick out our seeds. So I like tomatoes, so I'm going to go ahead and plant a tomato today. So you can just open up from the top here, or you can rip the package, you know, the easiest way to get it open. Just to rip the corner. All right, so I got my seeds ready. I'm gonna take my finger and like right about to my first knuckle, I'm gonna stick it down in there and make a hole. Maybe go to your second knuckle actually. So I'm gonna go down to my second knuckle, and so I have a little hole there. And I like to put 2 seeds in, just in case for some reason one seed doesn't take. I'll just put 2 tomato seeds in here. So I'm dropping them right in. And you just cover those seeds up with the dirt. All right. So some things that this plant is going to need, or that your seed is going to need to grow and to survive, is going to need water, it's going to need sunlight, and it's going to need some warmth. So the first thing I'm going to do, now that I have this down inside my pot, I like to use a water bottle. You can use a bottle of water if you like, but I like to kind of use a water bottle, that way I'm not totally drowning it. But you want to get this, you know, pretty wet. And another thing, you want to make sure that it's on just the sprayer setting, because you don't want to put too much water in there and sort of, you know, mess, you know, a solid jet, I guess, will force the seed out. So I'm just going to saturate the water, and now your pot's going to get a little wet, and that's okay. All right. So we're going to want to make sure this thing gets plenty of water every day. It's really good to squirt it with this bottle of water. When your seed starts to grow, you don't want to put water directly on the plant. You want to put it around the base of the plant. So this is an awesome way to start your seed, and this makes it really easy to transport it, you know, put it outside whenever it's a little bit warmer, and that sort of helps harden the plant a little bit too. So hardening a plant is a way to ensure that when you do move it outside, that it has some exposure to a little bit of a colder temperature, and it makes it harder or it makes it stronger. So that way, if you had a plant that was inside for a long time, say, and you take it outside, it could start to wilt under the heat and under the sun. Having it outside, you know, you don't want it to be freezing, but having it outside where it's a little bit cooler, you know, as long as the sun's out, it's gonna make that plant be a little bit stronger as it starts to grow. So you can put this outside in the sunlight in the day, bring it back in at night, make sure it has plenty of water, keep it someplace warm in your house because seeds need a lot of warmth. And then the awesome thing with this newspaper plant or newspaper pot is that it's totally sort of biodegradable. So this is going to turn into compost as your plant grows. One of the things that you can do with this pot, or one of the things that you will do with it whenever you plant it in your garden, you're going to take it and you're just going to rip. So this will get pretty wet throughout the time that you have this. This pot will get pretty wet, and it's going to be easy to rip. So we're going to rip the bottom out before we plant it outside, and we're going to set it down in the dirt, and we'll just cover it up. And so that really helps keep your roots together inside the dirt, and it also allows this newspaper, like I said, to sort of serve as compost to your seeds as well as it sort of decays under the ground. But like I said, it's very important that you rip this bottom out, because then your seed or your roots can sort of go down into the dirt and take root a little bit better. But we've had a lot of success with these potted plants. They're really easy to make. We use them a lot here at Earth Day in Brooke County schools when we do programs and presentations, and we also use them a lot in our community gardens and our Brooke Middle School garden. So that's how we make our newspaper potted plants. So just to recap, some of the things that you're going to want to do to take care of this plant are to make sure it gets plenty of water. So with your spray bottle, make sure you water it. Make sure it gets plenty of sun. So that means set it next to your window. Take it outside when it's sunny, and just make sure that when you do water it, once that little seed starts to sprout, that you keep the water around the base of the plant. And finally, when it warms up enough outside, you're going to be able to plant this just by pulling the bottom of the pot off, and just set it right down in your hole that you're going to dig for your garden. So in my experience, we've had a lot of luck planting sunflower seeds, peppers, and tomatoes in our newspaper pot. Thank you for joining us. I hope you guys enjoy the newspaper pots that you make. Happy gardening. For more general gardening tips, head to extension.wvu.edu.
Now you know you've had a good day in the garden when the sun's going down and you start to feel that twinge in your lower back, your knees, your shoulders, your whatever. Will Sam Zizzi of the College of Physical Activity and Sports Sciences is here to show us a few exercises to keep us working in the garden for years to come.
Hello, my name is Sam Zizzi, and I'm a professor of sport and exercise psychology in WVU's College of Physical Activity and Sports Sciences. I'm here today to talk to you about gardening as a form of physical activity, how you can do that safely, and what sort of benefits that you might get from that activity. You know, gardening is a great activity for a lot of people in West Virginia because it's a whole body and a whole family activity. A lot of people don't think about gardening as a way to be physically active, but it's often enjoyed by kids, adults, older adults alike, and it's often something that we might do with other members of our family, which is different than some other forms of physical activity. One of the other great things about gardening is that you often engage different parts of your body, and we're going to introduce a few exercises to help you get ready for that. So gardening, you might do things like sitting or bending or kneeling below your waist. You might also do a lot of things like reaching or moving around with your upper body. So it's really actually a great way to be physically active, and it's an activity that a lot of people will enjoy. The good news about gardening is that you can use the minutes and the time you spend gardening to contribute to meeting physical activity guidelines for your health. Those guidelines are approximately 2.5 hours a week, usually broken up to 5 days of about 30 minutes of moderate physical activity, and gardening can certainly count towards those minutes. There's some excellent research out there that suggests that gardening will help improve your activities of daily living. It will lower your risk of a variety of chronic diseases, and it could potentially even extend your life and improve the quality of your life. Finally, gardening is a great activity that's outdoors typically, and those moments spent outdoors in the dirt, like many of us in West Virginia like to do, are great for your mental health as well. We spend a lot of times in our family on the screen, either at work or at play at school, and so time spent outside, engaged with the natural environment, has really been shown to reduce stress, and it's just another space that people enjoy. It can also be quite a purposeful activity because you could produce your own food, fruit, and vegetables in addition to beautifying some of the area around your house. In today's episode, we're going to introduce a couple activities to help you get warmed up and do that safely, and we're going to talk about how you can integrate those into your routine. So let's go ahead and get started and look at some of those activities. For our first activity today, we're going to cover areas that might be below your waist because gardening sure does involve a lot of bending, squatting, stretching, and picking things up. So we're going to cover how to do that safely. I'm going to demonstrate a couple different ways to do this, and then I'm going to invite you to do a few reps with me along the way. So the first is we're going to do, in gardening we do a lot of squatting down and getting low to pick something up. And so it's important that we function the right technique on that because we don't want to injure ourselves when we do that. One tip is before you start gardening for the day, you might actually want to move around the house a little bit. You could go for a slight walk. It's good. Your body's going to respond better and be less likely to be injured if you took a short walk and you have a little bit of blood flowing. So that's a good tip to get started out as well. So let's start out with this squat. I'm going to show you how to do it with a straight back. A lot of people like to squat and they'll lean forward and they sort of lose their balance. What you want to do instead is keep your back straight and come down. Now you might notice I have a chair behind me. If you struggle a little bit with your knees or you're concerned at all about falling down because of lack of strength, or maybe you've had some injuries, you can put a chair down there and you just can squat down until you touch that chair and then you can come back up. I like to keep my arms out in front of me. It's a little easier to maintain my balance. You can do it real slowly and you come down. So let's try to do a few of those with a straight back, and we're just going to count 5 of those. Okay, thanks for doing that with me. What you can do, if that's something you're able to do when you initially start out this exercise, you can start with 3 to 5 of those, and then you can work your way up to 10 to 15 reps, and that's something you could do each day or each morning, or you could do it a few days a week if you want to work on some of your lower body strength. Now, the other activity I want to do, you might see I have a plant in front of me. We do a lot of picking up and carrying when we're doing gardening, and that's a good way to get injured if you don't do that correctly. So a lot of people might reach out for this and they've come down this way, they're going to lose their balance possibly, and they might also hurt their back picking that up, especially if it's heavy. So an easier way to do that is you can apply that squat. You come down here, get your arms around it, and you can pick it up using the muscles you have in your legs. So that's a good way to think about it. So it's just that squat extended, and you can notice that my back stays straight on that. That'll be particularly important for any stuff that you're doing below the waist. Now, one way in gardening you can reduce that problem is if you're working in a raised bed or something that's at a level near your waist, it does make those activities a little bit easier. Alternatively, you can kneel and you can have something you put your knees on if you're working on the ground in more of a traditional garden setting. Let's go ahead and move on to the second activity. Let's try a second activity today that is meant to get your shoulders and your upper body ready for all the stretching and moving that you might be doing while you're gardening. The first is a nice easy one. One of my favorite activities to do is arm circles. So you're going to bring your arms up here about at a 90-degree angle out from your chest. And you can hold them this way if you like, or you can extend them straight out, it's okay. And we're going to make small circles going both forward and backwards. And so you can just sort of feel that if you want to try that out on yourself. This is also a great one to do during the work day too, just to get a break from the desk or if you're sitting down for a while. This is one that you want to do before you start to do a lot of these activities related to gardening. So we're going to try 10 moving forward, and then we're going to do 10 going backwards. So you can count with me if you want. And then we're going to switch to backwards. Okay, very good. And you might even feel a little bit of blood flow going on your shoulders, and that's great. Now the second one, a lot of times with gardening, you'll have to reach up and grab something or maybe put up a hanging pot or deal with something that's over your head. These are also great exercises that help with things at home, putting away your groceries in the tall cabinet. And so we're gonna go and do some exercises that stretch out this way, both arms, so that you're prepared to reach. And so you can have one hand on your hip on one side and you reach up across, and you can reach up across this way. And so we'll do 10 of these together. We'll do 5 on each side. Okay, so hopefully those shoulder exercises will help you feel like, okay, this is ready for work, and you can get out there and do some of this physical activity by yourself or with your family, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode on gardening as a form of physical activity. We went through a couple different ways that you can get both your lower body and your upper body ready for gardening. And those exercises are something you can do on your own as well, and it would help you get prepared for a lot of different types of physical activities and build some of your strength and mobility. Those activities that really improve your functional fitness and your mobility are going to help you with all different kind of activities you have to do, like getting groceries and getting around the house, and anything you really just are going to improve the quality of your life. So I encourage you to keep doing those as much as you can. For more tips on health, gardening, and more, visit extension.wvu.edu.
Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of WVU Extension Today. We'll see you next time.